Okay, so picture this. You're walking home late one night and bam, this crazy light just flashes across the sky.
Whoa.
Yeah, I know, right? No warning or anything, just like sudden light. What would you do?
I guess it depends, right? Like what kind of light are we talking? Is it like a beam or like a flash?
More like a streak, I guess.
Hmm. Well, even then, it could be a lot of things, It could be a meteor or like some weird weather thing.
Yeah, true, true. But it's interesting how we all kind of jump to our own conclusions, right? Like, you might see that light and think alien invasion, but someone else might think, oh, cool, a shooting star.
Exactly. We all bring our own baggage to these situations. Our beliefs and experiences shape how we interpret the extraordinary. Like someone who's into UFOs might see that light and instantly think spaceship, while someone who's more scientifically minded might think atmospheric phenomenon.
It's so true. And that's kind of what we're diving into today. It's all about how people react when faced with something that seems impossible.
The impossible, huh? Sounds intriguing.
It is. It is. We're looking at the Gospel of John, specifically the story where Jesus heals a man who was born blind.
Ah, classic miracle story. But I bet there's more to it than meets the eye.
You got it. We've got your notes on the gospel itself, plus some articles about biblical interpretations, even a few historical analyses of first century Judea. So we're going to unpack how different people process this event that just seems to defy logic and maybe even their own deeply held beliefs.
It's worth remembering that being born blind back then wasn't just a physical thing. It was a huge social stigma, too.
Yep.
People often saw it as a punishment from God or a sign of spiritual impurity.
Wow, so imagine his world before the miracle, right? Just total darkness, relying on others for almost everything, probably living on the fringes of society.
Yeah,
Then all of a sudden, boom, he can see. And not just shapes and shadows, but the world in all its crazy detail.
that would be incredible, wouldn't it? Like being dropped onto another planet. Everything would be so new, so overwhelming.
I know. Makes me wonder about those little aha moments we all have, right? Those times when something clicks into place and our view of the world, or even just a tiny part of it, suddenly shifts.
Absolutely. Those moments force us to reevaluate things, to question what we thought we knew.
And that's exactly what's happening in the Gospel of John, right? Everyone who witnesses this healing has a different reaction. Some are amazed, some are scared, some are just plain hostile. It's a whole spectrum.
That makes sense. I mean, a
Mhm.
miracle like that would definitely shake things up.
For sure. And John really highlights those different responses by focusing on a few key groups. The neighbors and folks who knew the blind man before, his parents who are obviously in a tough spot, the Pharisees, and then the man himself who goes through quite a transformation.
Let's start with those who knew him before. Imagine you've always known this guy as a beggar, blind since birth, and now he's walking around naming things, recognizing people. It'd be pretty shocking, right?
Totally. Some folks probably thought it was a trick, like some kind of magic act to get attention.
Hmm. Or maybe they were genuinely scared. After all, this is a time and place where miracles were often seen as proof of divine power.
Yeah, you're right. It definitely raises some big questions. Like, what did this healing say about Jesus? About their own relationship with God? Lots to unpack there.
And then you've got the parents. They must have been so relieved that their son could finally see, but also super anxious about the whole situation.
Especially with the Pharisees lurking around. From what I've read, they were a powerful group back then, with influence over everything from religious matters to legal disputes.
Exactly. Challenging them was no joke.
And the parents knew that. When they were questioned about the healing, they were super careful, almost evasive. Like, they confirmed their son was born blind, but dodged the details about how it all went down.
It sounds like they were trying to walk a fine line, protecting their son and themselves.
Sure, a total lose-lose situation.
Yeah.
But speaking of tricky situations, let's talk about the Pharisees. They were furious about this whole thing.
Furious. Why? That a man was healed.
Not exactly. They were mad because, according to their interpretation, Jesus broke the Sabbath by performing the healing.
Ah, I see. The Sabbath was a big deal for them, wasn't it?
Absolutely. It wasn't just a day off. It was a core part of their faith, a sign of their covenant with God. They had a whole system of rules and interpretations built around it.
So for them, Jesus' actions were a direct challenge to that system.
And it's kind of ironic, isn't it? A man who's never seen can now experience the world in a whole new way, and all they care about is whether or not a rule was technically broken.
It almost seems like they need him to stay blind because his sight threatens their whole worldview.
That's a good point. Maybe, deep down, some of them were even jealous of Jesus. Here he is, performing miracles, gaining followers, and they're worried about their own authority being diminished.
Or maybe they truly believed they were defending their faith, even if it meant clinging to dogma at the expense of compassion.
It's a good reminder that sometimes the things we hold most dear can actually blind us to the truth.
True. Which brings us to the man himself. His initial response to the Pharisees is so simple, but so powerful. One thing I know, though I was born blind, now I see.
He's not arguing theology or philosophy, he's just stating a fact, but it's also a declaration of change.
Yeah, like he's stepping into a whole new way of being in the world.
And his journey doesn't stop there. It's like his physical sight unlocks a deeper kind of seeing, a spiritual awakening. At first, he just acknowledges Jesus' ability to heal. Then he calls him a prophet, someone sent from God.
And finally, he takes that huge leap of faith and worships Jesus as the Son of Man. That's a pretty loaded title.
Yeah, it appears throughout the Old Testament, often referring to a figure who'll come to judge and redeem humanity.
So Jesus is making a bold claim there.
And it's fascinating how this man who's just entered a world of light and color seems to get it more than those who've been steeped in religious tradition their whole lives.
He's risking everything by saying that, isn't he? His family, his place in the community.
Exactly. He could be ostracized, even punished. But he's so convicted, so sure of what he's seen.
It makes you wonder, what makes his testimony so powerful? Is it that unwavering faith? The fact that he experienced the miracle firsthand? Or something else entirely?
Maybe it's a combination of all those things. He's speaking from a place of deep personal experience.
And that kind of authenticity is hard to ignore, even if you disagree with the message itself.
You know, it's like he's not just seeing with his eyes, he's seeing with his heart too. And that brings us to this whole idea of genuine faith. I was reading this article by a bunch of Bible scholars, and they actually came up with 9 indicators of true belief. Almost like a point system for measuring conviction.
A point system. Okay, I gotta hear this.
Yeah, so some are pretty basic, like believing Jesus is the Messiah or being willing to risk, I don't know, persecution or something for your beliefs.
Right, makes sense.
But then there are others that are way more subtle, like having confidence in the healing, not just for yourself, but for other people too. And like returning to Jesus, even when you kind of mess up.
So it's not just about saying you believe, it's about actually living it out day after day.
Exactly. And it really got me thinking, how often do we actually stop and examine our own beliefs that closely? What are we really willing to stand up for, even when it's hard or even dangerous?
That's a good question to ask ourselves, for sure.
And it kind of circles back to what we were talking about before, right? About perspective. The blind man's healing was a huge turning point for everyone involved. But how they reacted totally depended on what they already believed, their biases, even their fears, I guess.
It's like that saying, we don't see the world as it is, we see it as we are.
Oh, I like that.
And it's true. We all have these filters in our minds that shape how we interpret things. Like with the Pharisees, they were so focused on the law and the rules that they completely missed the point of the whole miracle.
They were blinded by their own authority, huh? Unable to see the good that had actually happened.
And that brings up a really interesting question. What happens when our perspective becomes so rigid that it stops us from seeing the world in all its complexity? When it shuts down empathy and compassion?
That's deep. It's like we get stuck in our own little boxes and we can't see outside of them.
Right. It's like those optical illusions where you see one image and then you shift your focus a little and suddenly a whole different picture emerges. Sometimes we need those aha moments, those things that shake us out of our usual ways of seeing.
But those moments can be pretty uncomfortable, can't they?
Definitely. It's way easier to stick with what's familiar, even if it's holding us back.
It's like that whole Galileo thing, right? He had the guts to challenge the idea that the Earth was the center of the universe, and people freaked out.
Yeah, it took ages for his ideas to be accepted. And even today, we see people clinging to beliefs even when there's tons of evidence against them.
Whether it's climate change or, conspiracy theories or whatever, sometimes it feels like we just bury our heads in the sand.
It's like we're afraid of the truth, or maybe just afraid of change.
But the man born blind, he didn't have that choice. He was forced to see the world in a new way. And by doing that, he became a symbol of, the power of faith and the bravery it takes to go against the grain.
He was blind, but somehow he saw more clearly than those who thought they had perfect vision.
It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the greatest insights come from the most unexpected places.
Exactly. And it brings us back to that question of how we can cultivate that kind of openness, that willingness to let go of our preconceived ideas and embrace new perspectives. It can't be easy
That
for us.
it takes a lot of humility, I think, like being able to say, okay, maybe I don't know everything.
Right, and being willing to sit with those uncomfortable feelings, to accept that maybe the truth isn't always black and white.
It takes guts, too. The
Yeah.
guts to question what we've always been taught, to actually listen to people who disagree with us.
To be willing to admit when we're wrong.
It doesn't mean throwing out all our beliefs, but
Wow.
it does mean being willing to, like, refine them or expand them.
It's an ongoing process.
I read this quote the other day that said, the root of the word education literally means to lead out. It's not about cramming information into our heads, but about being pulled out of ourselves, out of our limited ways of seeing, into a wider world.
I love that. And it makes me think about all the different ways we can lead ourselves out. Through travel, through art, through talking to people who are different from us.
It's about staying curious, always being hungry for knowledge.
And maybe, just maybe, it's about remembering that mysterious light in the sky and choosing to see it not as something scary, but as an invitation to learn more, to explore more.
I like that. So it all comes back to that image, right? That unexpected light in the sky. How would you react? Would you be scared, curious? Would you try to figure out what you saw?
The man born blind, he didn't have a choice. He was thrown into this whole new reality and he had to deal with it. And in doing that, he makes us think about how we'd handle something similar, something that just turns our world upside down.
Would we hold on to what we know, even if it meant ignoring the truth staring us in the face? Or would we be brave enough to, step into the unknown, to see things differently? It's a pretty big question, isn't it?
It is. And maybe it's not just about those big life-changing events. Maybe it's also about those smaller moments we have every day where we could re-examine our assumptions.
Like what?
I don't know, those conversations that make us a little uncomfortable, the news stories that challenge how we view the world, those times when we're forced out of our comfort zones.
Those are the times that can really help us grow, right? Like, remember that phrase we talked about, leading ourselves out?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They might not be as dramatic as suddenly being able to see, but they can be just as powerful in their own way.
And there's something kind of beautiful about that, isn't there? The idea that growth and understanding can come from anywhere, even the most unexpected places.
It's true. So what's the biggest takeaway for you from all this? If you had to sum it all up in one sentence, what would it be?
That's a tough one. But I think it's about the power of perspective and how much courage it takes to actually change it.
I like that. Whether it's the man born blind stepping into a new reality, or Galileo shaking up centuries of scientific beliefs, or even just us admitting when we're wrong, it's that willingness to change that helps us see the world and ourselves more clearly.
And it's not just about seeing, it's about getting it, connecting the dots, figuring out the patterns, and always looking for a deeper meaning.
It's about realizing that we never stop learning. There's always something new to discover, something else to question, something more to explore.
So here's a final thought to chew on as we wrap things up. What if, instead of being scared of those moments that challenge our beliefs, we welcomed them? What if we saw them not as threats, but as chances to grow?
What if, like the man born blind, we let ourselves be amazed by the light, even if it means leaving behind the darkness we used to know?
That's a great image to end on. So to everyone out there listening, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep your eyes open to the unexpected. Who knows what you might find?